The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the desolate backroads that stretched before me. I was running late, eager to reach my destination, when a voice inside me whispered of a shortcut, a hidden path that would save me precious time. Ignoring my better judgment, I veered off the familiar route, embarking on a nightmarish journey into the unknown. The road ahead grew increasingly narrow, winding through dense forests and overgrown fields. The air turned heavy, laden with an unnatural silence that seemed to suffocate my senses. I should have turned back and retraced my steps to safety, but a sinister curiosity urged me forward. The path twisted and turned, its contours morphing with each passing moment. My surroundings became disorienting, the trees looming like spectral sentinels, their branches reaching out as if to ensnare me. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind, but I pressed on, driven by an unseen force that compelled me deeper into this nightmarish maze. The road forked, offering multiple paths that seemed to shift and rearrange before my eyes. A cold sweat trickled down my brow as I realized I was trapped within a labyrinth of uncertainty. Each turn I took led me further into the twisted heart of this enigmatic realm, with no way to retrace my steps. My pulse quickened, matching the cadence of my racing thoughts. Shadows danced along the edges of my vision, taunting and teasing me with their elusive forms. Whispers, barely audible, echoed through the eerie stillness, but their words were incomprehensible, a maddening symphony of half-formed syllables. I tried to rely on my instincts, my internal compass, but the rules of navigation seemed to have abandoned this forsaken place. Landmarks shifted, merging into a distorted tapestry of confusion. The road beneath my tires felt like an illusion, a cruel trick of perception that led me astray. Fear clenched my throat as hours bled into each other, time becoming an abstract concept lost within the labyrinth's grasp. Exhaustion gnawed at my bones, yet the ever-changing paths demanded my unwavering attention. I was a pawn in a game I did not understand, and the rules were written in a language I couldn't decipher. Just as despair threatened to consume me entirely, a glimmer of hope flickered in the distance. A faint light, like a beacon in the suffocating darkness, guided me towards a clearing. Relief washed over me as I emerged from the twisted maze, my heart pounding in my chest. But the respite was short-lived. The clearing revealed a macabre scene, a congregation of figures, their faces obscured by shadows. Their presence radiated malevolence, as if they were the guardians of this sinister realm. I could feel their eyes upon me, piercing my soul with their icy gaze. With no other choice but to face them, I stepped out of my vehicle, my legs trembling beneath me. Their voices rose in a chilling chorus, a cacophony of otherworldly tones that sent shivers down my spine. They beckoned me to join them, their hollow whispers tempting me to abandon all hope. But in that moment, a surge of determination ignited within me. I refused to succumb to the darkness that clung to this nightmarish place. I turned away from the haunting figures, my resolve hardening with each step. I retraced my path, navigating the shifting paths with newfound clarity. The labyrinth fought against my escape, attempting to confuse and disorient me, but I refused to yield. With every fiber of my being, I pushed forward, relying on my instinct and sheer willpower to guide me back to the safety of the familiar world. As the first rays of dawn kissed the horizon, I emerged from the twisted maze, my body trembling with exhaustion. The backroads stretched before me once again, their familiarity a comfort I had taken for granted. I climbed back into my vehicle, vowing to never stray from the known path again. The memory of that nightmarish labyrinth would haunt my dreams, a reminder of the unfathomable depths that exist just beyond the edges of our perception. And though I emerged physically unscathed, I knew deep within me that a part of my soul would forever be entwined with that surreal realm, a reminder of the dark forces that lie hidden in the shadows, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their twisted grasp. Let's hop onto story number 2, but before I begin reading, make sure that you have subscribed to Mr. Scare for regular horror podcasts. It was a moonless night, and the desolate stretch of highway ahead seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white as my car sputtered and came to a sudden halt. Panic surged through me as I realized I was stranded on this forsaken road, far from civilization and any signs of life. I fumbled with my phone, hoping for a glimmer of reception, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. No bars, no signal. I cursed under my breath, the isolation and helplessness sinking in. With a sigh, I resigned myself to wait for rescue, hoping that someone would come along soon. As I sat in the eerie stillness of the night, the silence became deafening. There was no sound, no passing cars, just the lonely whisper of the wind. Shadows danced and flickered across the asphalt, casting sinister shapes that seemed to taunt me from the periphery of my vision. Unease settled over me like a heavy shroud. Minutes turned into hours, and the darkness seemed to grow thicker, pressing in on me from all sides. I became acutely aware of the absence of any comforting sounds. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an eerie emptiness that sent chills down my spine. The air felt heavy with an unspoken presence, as if I was being watched by something unseen. A flicker of movement caught my attention. I turned my gaze towards the roadside, straining my eyes to penetrate the darkness. Shadows seemed to gather, swirling and contorting, forming grotesque shapes that defied reason. My heart pounded in my chest, and a cold sweat trickled down my back. Fear consumed me, and I locked the car doors, seeking refuge within the confines of my vehicle. But even within the safety of the locked doors, I couldn't shake the feeling of being exposed, vulnerable to whatever malevolent force lurked in the shadows. As the night wore on, my senses heightened, attuned to every sound, every rustle. The wind whispered haunting melodies, carrying echoes of indiscernible voices that sent shivers down my spine. Shadows elongated and seemed to reach towards me, like ethereal tendrils eager to snatch me away into the abyss. Time became distorted, the minutes stretching into an eternity. Desperation clawed at my sanity, as if the darkness itself was conspiring against me. Thoughts of escape gnawed at my mind, but the thought of venturing out into the unknown, into the clutches of the unseen, filled me with terror. And then, amidst the suffocating darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged. Headlights pierced through the black void, illuminating the road ahead. Relief washed over me as a tow truck pulled up behind my car. The driver, a grizzled man with a kind smile, assured me that he would get my vehicle to safety. As we waited for the tow truck to do its work, I shared my harrowing experience with the driver, describing the sense of foreboding and the presence that seemed to haunt the desolate highway. To my surprise, he listened intently, his eyes filled with understanding. He leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not the first to experience the darkness on this road," he said. "Legends speak of a malevolent force that dwells here, feeding on the fear of the lost souls who stumble upon its domain." My blood ran cold as his words sank in. The presence I had sensed, the ominous shadows, they were not my imagination. They were real, a manifestation of the darkness that haunted this forsaken highway. As the tow truck driver completed his work and I climbed back into my car, a newfound resolve washed over me. I would never forget this night, this encounter with the malevolent force that dwelled in the shadows. From that moment on, I would heed the warnings, avoiding this cursed road and sharing my tale of terror with others, hoping to spare them from a fate worse than the darkness itself. And as I drove away, leaving the haunted highway behind, I couldn't help but glance back one last time, catching a glimpse of the swirling shadows that seemed to linger, waiting for their next unsuspecting victim. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white as I drove along the desolate stretch of highway that seemed to stretch endlessly into the night. The flickering streetlights cast eerie shadows on the barren landscape, amplifying my growing unease. As I continued my journey, an ominous silence hung in the air, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of static on the radio. It was during one of these moments of static that I first heard it, a faint whisper of words that barely registered in my mind. Startled, I reached out to adjust the dial, searching for a clear frequency. But as I did, the whisper grew louder, evolving into an unsettling voice that sent shivers down my spine. "The end is near," it hissed, its tone laced with a chilling certainty. I froze, my eyes darting around the darkened interior of the car. Was this some sick prank? Or had I stumbled upon a radio frequency hijacked by a deranged individual? Regardless, the voice seemed to know my every move, predicting my fears and fueling my growing paranoia. As I continued my journey, the radio transmissions became more frequent and explicit, each message more disturbing than the last. It spoke of imminent doom, of a looming catastrophe that was destined to consume me. It was as if the voice had tapped into the darkest corners of my mind, exposing my deepest fears and exploiting them. My heart pounded in my chest with every word, my breath quickening as the voice grew louder, drowning out all other sounds. The once familiar road seemed alien and threatening, as if the very asphalt beneath my tires was conspiring against me. Shadows danced in my peripheral vision, mocking and taunting me with their twisted forms. I tried to switch off the radio, desperate to escape the voice's clutches, but it persisted, penetrating the airwaves as if it were an ethereal force I could not evade. The voice's predictions grew more specific, describing landmarks that lay ahead, a broken bridge, a dilapidated gas station, each one tinged with an ominous fate that awaited me. My mind became a battlefield of terror, torn between succumbing to the voice's predictions and fighting for my survival. Doubt gnawed at my resolve, tempting me to surrender to the impending doom that seemed inevitable. But a flicker of defiance burned within me, refusing to accept my predetermined fate. With trembling hands, I pulled over to the side of the road, my breath ragged and sweat trickling down my brow. The darkness engulfed me, wrapping me in its suffocating embrace. In the silence that followed, I mustered the courage to confront the voice, to challenge its power over me. Why me? I screamed into the void, my voice swallowed by the night. What have I done to deserve this torment? But the voice offered no answers, only a sinister laughter that echoed in the recesses of my mind. Its insidious presence was a constant reminder of my vulnerability, a reminder that my fate was entwined with forces beyond my comprehension. Determined not to be a passive victim, I made a choice, an act of defiance against the impending doom. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned off the radio and threw it out the window, its static-filled transmissions fading into the distance. As I drove on, the darkness began to lift, and a sense of relief washed over me. It was as if I had severed the connection to the malevolent force that had plagued me. Though the scars of that harrowing experience remained, I felt a renewed strength within me, a resilience forged from facing the depths of my own fears. But even as I continued my journey, a lingering unease remained, a reminder that there are forces in this world that defy explanation, that lurk in the shadows and prey upon our vulnerabilities. The haunting whispers on the airwaves had taught me that sometimes, the most terrifying demons are the ones we cannot see, the ones that reside within the recesses of our own minds. And as long as those voices lingered, I would forever question the boundaries of reality and the true nature of the world around me. I had always enjoyed the thrill of a spontaneous road trip with my friends, but little did I know that our late-night adventure would turn into a nightmare we could never escape. It was a cool summer evening when we piled into the car, excitement and anticipation filling the air. Our destination was a hidden gem of a camping spot deep in the wilderness, known only to locals. As we ventured into the night, our laughter and music filled the car, blending with the hum of the engine. Everything seemed perfect until our GPS suddenly flickered and went blank. Confusion and concern swept through us, but we reassured ourselves that we had a general sense of direction and could navigate without it. Little did we know that our decision would lead us into a trap of unimaginable terror. As the minutes turned into hours, we found ourselves traveling down a seemingly endless road, passing the same landmarks over and over again. The gnawing unease settled within us, growing with each repetition. Our jokes turned into whispers of worry, and the music became an eerie background soundtrack to our mounting fear. We tried to find alternate routes, but every turn led us back to the same monotonous stretch of road. Panic gripped our hearts as the reality sunk in. We were trapped in an endless loop, with no escape from the clutches of the nightmarish road. The darkness outside seemed to grow thicker, swallowing the surrounding landscape. Shadows danced in the corners of our vision, elongating into grotesque shapes that hinted at something malevolent lurking just beyond our sight. Our once vibrant conversations became hushed murmurs, afraid that even our own voices might attract something we couldn't comprehend. Time lost all meaning as the hours stretched into an eternity. Fatigue weighed heavily on our shoulders, yet we dared not rest, afraid that sleep might seal our fates in this macabre loop forever. Each time we passed the same landmark, a sense of despair enveloped us, chipping away at our sanity. Within the car, tensions rose, and friendships frayed. The constant repetition gnawed at our minds, eroding our hope and replacing it with a sense of impending doom. We questioned our every decision, dissecting each choice in desperate search of a way out. But just as despair threatened to consume us entirely, a glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness. Through the rear window, one of us caught a glimpse of a faded sign, barely visible in the dim light. It bore a cryptic message: break the cycle, face the unknown. Driven by desperation, we made a unanimous decision. With trembling hands, we drove forward, ignoring the familiar landmarks, pushing deeper into the unknown. The road twisted and turned, revealing an uncharted path that led us away from the monotonous loop that had held us captive for so long. As we left the endless road behind, a collective sigh of relief escaped our lips. The darkness began to recede, and the air grew lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from our weary souls. We had broken free from the clutches of the nightmarish loop. Though the scars of that harrowing experience would forever linger, we emerged stronger, bound together by the sheer horror we had endured. The road trip that was meant to be a carefree adventure had transformed into a haunting ordeal, reminding us of the fragility of our existence and the unseen terrors that lurk in the shadows. We vowed never to speak of that night again, for fear that its malevolent grip might somehow find its way back into our lives. But the memory remains etched in our minds, a reminder of the twisted depths of the unknown that lie beneath the surface of our reality. So, if you ever find yourself on a late-night road trip, be cautious of the unseen forces that may steer you into an endless loop, where time stands still and escape seems impossible. Trust your instincts, break the cycle, and face the unknown, if you dare. As the darkness enveloped the desolate road ahead, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. The late-night drive had become a lonely journey through the abyss, illuminated only by the narrow beam of my headlights. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white, trying to shake off the growing sense of unease that settled within me. The monotony of the road was broken when my headlights pierced through the veil of darkness, revealing a chilling sight on the side of the road. Figures stood motionless, their presence sending a jolt of terror coursing through my veins. Their silhouettes seemed distorted, their forms twisted and elongated, as if they were remnants of a forgotten nightmare. As I drew nearer, I caught a glimpse of their haunting eyes, devoid of life or emotion. They stared at me with an intensity that pierced my soul, their empty gazes drilling into the core of my being. I couldn't tear my eyes away from their haunting visages, as if they held some dark secret, some ancient knowledge that threatened to unravel my sanity. Unease settled within me like a heavy fog, suffocating and oppressive. The figures made no move, their eerie stillness deepening the sense of foreboding that clung to the air. I couldn't understand what they were or why they stood there, but their presence was undeniably unnatural, a macabre spectacle etched into my memory. I sped up, hoping to escape their piercing gaze, but no matter how fast I drove, they remained at the edge of my vision, haunting my every move. Panic seized my chest, constricting my breathing, as the realization sank in that I was trapped in this nightmare, surrounded by the watchful eyes of the unknown. As the road stretched on, I could feel their presence lingering, as if they were somehow connected to this desolate highway, forever bound to its cursed confines. Questions tumbled through my mind, demanding answers I couldn't possibly fathom. Who were they? What were they? And why did they stand there, watching, always watching? A chilling wind whistled through the cracked window, carrying with it whispers that sounded like distant cries of agony. The unsettling figures seemed to multiply, their ranks growing with each passing mile. I felt their presence in the back of my mind, an unrelenting force that gnawed at my sanity. The weight of their gaze pressed upon me, driving me to the edge of madness. I could no longer distinguish reality from the twisted nightmare that unfolded before me. Shadows danced on the periphery of my vision, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. It was as if the very fabric of the night had come alive, tormenting me with its sinister presence. Fear consumed me, but I dared not stop. I knew deep down that if I were to halt my journey, to confront the haunting figures, I would be forever lost to their clutches. So, I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. Hours passed, the road stretching into eternity, until finally, the figures began to fade from view. Their haunting eyes vanished into the depths of the night, leaving me trembling in the wake of their departure. The weight lifted from my shoulders, but their memory remained etched into my consciousness, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked in the darkness. To this day, I cannot forget those empty, haunting eyes. They serve as a constant reminder that there are forces in this world beyond our comprehension, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be glimpsed by the unsuspecting. And as I continue my journeys through the night, I keep my gaze fixed ahead, never daring to look too closely at the side of the road, for fear of what I might see.